Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I'm Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we are joined by friend of the pod, famous gay, Chris Gonzalez. Welcome aboard. Choo Choo. How are you?
Hello.
Good, thank you. Hello. Please hold the tomato throwing for after the event.
Yes. Okay, so I did see something on Twitter like that. You know how you can send an emoji and it fills the page? Somebody just did that with a tomato. Somebody said something bad. It's like, boo, and just sent a bunch. Anyways, sorry.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what you're talking about.
Don't throw the tomatoes now.
Oh, okay. I'll send it in the group chat. Welcome to the show. How are you, first and foremost? What's going on? Tell us about you. What's your deal?
Very good. I mean, I'm doing great, just like everybody else in the world.
Okay.
Sunshine, rainbows, all the time, forever.
A must.
Nothing bad is happening.
Nothing bad.
Nothing bad has happened or will happen.
I can tell you I'm very excited to talk about this movies, I should say.
Yes.
Watched them both twice, so I'm ready.
Oh, shit.
Oh my
okay.
God, that's so much dedication.
Wait, that's literally like 12 hours.
Yeah, I wasted half a day.
Whoa, congrats. I mean, let's talk about it. I'm so down. Okay, so the movies in question that we're alluding to here, what if we just like drew it out and we just didn't say the names? And we would like people had to
Let
guess
them
some
figure it
context
out.
clues. Yeah, you guys will have to figure. We bleep all the characters. Okay, no. So we're talking about West Side Story.
We even okay, sorry.
West Side Story, and we want to live in America. Jess, what is your history with West Side Story?
Well, I think I have more history with this than the both of you. So
Probably.
Again, listeners will know that I was the president of the Thespian Society in high school. Loved plays, loved musicals, did the whole thing. I actually tried out for a production of West Side Story in high school, which is wild because it wasn't even my high school. It was like somebody made me go try out at the Catholic school because they had like open auditions. I obviously didn't get it.
Okay, Jess is a ringer, everybody.
Everybody,
Whoa.
okay. I was like, I felt like the little kid that just showed up. And one, I didn't know anybody because everybody all went to Catholic school. And I was like, I didn't. And then like, so I'm already an outcast. And then I'm also the least talented because all these people like obviously have like instructors and like private lessons and stuff like that. So I'm trying to do some of these like dance moves and I'm just like, this is not working. And I never went back again.
I love that.
Embarrassing. And then forever after that, like people would like, my mom once got me like a West Side Story like special edition with like a book. And I was like, okay, I don't really like it that much. Like, I mean, the dancing scenes, like the dancing is cool, but like, y'all, it's just Romeo and Juliet. We'll get into all of that. But that's
it's
my
brown-faced
history.
Romeo and Juliet. Like,
yes!
God.
Oh my God.
That's all it is. Okay. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
and
that's my history.
I was just talking to Shelby about this. It's so funny that like how many white productions of all white children have done this and put on some really offensive affect. I mean,
So
like,
many.
Some kid from Ohio being like, like you're like, shut up, go away, go home, go to sleep.
Like the only
cancel
character
the show.
that I was qualified to play was Graciela, and she maybe had 2 lines in the whole thing. So
it's such a weird
maybe I should
show.
Both of them were just yelling riff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, Mambo. That's the only thing. You just dance a lot. That's my history with this.
Chris, what is your history with this sweet, sweet IP?
So I've never seen West Side Story before. Basically, the new one came out. I really like Sondheim, though. And so I kind of came into liking musicals very, not late in life. Like I'm not, anyway, like very recently.
Yeah.
But I've liked a lot of Sondheim stuff that I've heard before, and so this was just like, I was very prepared to come into this and just be like, oh, this is really good, I really love it. But as it stands...
Okay. I was waiting.
Like
there was,
dramatic pause.
Yeah, there was that leading tense, yes, okay.
Yeah, it's always been on my radar. Like, you know, the popular songs, even if you don't know them. Like, I know I'm So Pretty because I liked Mrs. Doubtfire, and like, you know, all of the references after the movie came out that just incorporated into it.
You want to know the craziest thing about me? One of the craziest things about me, I didn't know I Feel Pretty was a part of this until I was watching it yesterday. I literally thought that was a song from a completely different show. I knew the song. I know the song. Of course I know the song. But it felt British to me for some reason. So the fact that it was like in this was like, that does not make sense for some reason. But it's here and I love it. Well, it's fine. I don't love it. I feel like that's too much praise. My history, similarly, I don't have one. I saw them both for the first time. I know so little about this. I knew it was a Romeo... I was gonna say Romeo and Michelle knockoff. It's a Romeo and Michelle knockoff. It's kind of a spin on Romeo and Juliet, as we know. Jets versus Sharks. I knew the thing as like a trope or a comedic beat and a lot of other shit, and I get a lot of the stuff that is referenced generally, but I know next to nothing about this story. So this was my first time with it also. So there's a lot to say about A, the story, B, these movies. How do we feel about just diving in head first?
I was going to
Are we going to say
try
something
to
else?
make
Sorry.
a reference to like whatever song like it would be appropriate. Like I was like, I feel pretty. No, wait, that doesn't work.
Be like, yeah, I'm cool with that.
Tonight?
We're Maria.
You're both so much smarter than me. Let's do this. Let's go. In 1950s New York, two rival gangs, the Jets, a group of white boys, and the Sharks, a group of Puerto Rican boys, are struggling for control of the Upper West Side. One day, Riff, the Jets' leader, decides it's time to have a rumble with the Sharks to determine control of the street once and for all. Riff enlists Tony, a founding member of the Jets, to be his right hand at the War Council to challenge and discuss the terms of the rumble with the Sharks. Instead, Tony ends up falling in love, big old air quotes, with a young woman named Maria, who happens to be the sister of Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks. Yeep! Bernardo's girlfriend Anita tries to convince him not to use Maria as an excuse to go to war with the Jets, but the two end up having an argument about their life in America instead.
Meanwhile, Maria and Tony fall deeper in love despite their different backgrounds and decide to try to end the violence between the Jets and the Sharks. Tony ends up convincing the gangs to disallow weapons at the Rumble, which they bring anyway, then tries to stop the fight from happening altogether, which leads to Bernardo killing Riff and Tony killing Bernardo. Whoops. Tony goes to see Maria, who's bummed her brother is dead, but stoked Tony is alive, and the two plan to run away together. Devastated by Bernardo's death, Anita goes to Maria for comfort, but finds her in bed with the man that killed him. She reluctantly agrees to help them escape, but is sexually assaulted by the Jets in the process. Incalculably upset, she lies to everyone, claiming Maria is also dead, which sends Tony to seek out his own death. But wait, Maria is actually alive and holds Tony as he dies. Womp, womp, womp. Okay, so where do we start with this?
I think we should start by saying exactly what we said in the intro. There was only one Puerto Rican cast member who was Anita, so everybody else is just in brownface.
Yeah, historically and famously, this is Brownface the musical.
Yeah, Rita Moreno famously forced to also wear a brown face.
Yes.
To satisfy the white makeup artist.
Yes.
And she was telling in the interview that she had like a couple of years ago, she said like, hey, actually Puerto Rican people have like a myriad of different complexions and like colors to our skin. And he was like, nope. And just like slapped it on anyway. And she's like, she was so, rightfully so, fucking offended. Like, I cannot imagine the rage that she felt at that moment.
What a messy little production. I mean, granted, first and foremost, the choreography, stunning. It is some of the best choreography. It's beyond. It's so good. It's so fantastic.
Yeah, just truly like exuberant is the word that I would use.
Yeah, it's wild. Even for that, because a lot of those old musicals are a little bit like sleepy, with the exception of like some of those like Singing in the Rain and some of those other ones where like the numbers are like really big and vivacious and tappy. This one was so interesting for what it was. Like, I feel like a lot of these moments were like almost interpretive dance numbers where like the fighting sequence is like, and it's like really gay. And it's like these boys being like, I'm going to kill you. And it's like, no, I'm falling. Like, yeah.
I'm
Very
tumbling into your arms.
Yeah.
And it's a fight.
Help me.
But
I'm
also
being
you're
held.
catching me.
Also, you're catching me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the dance numbers are incredible in this. Like from the very first dance number where they're just kind of like doing the snapping and like it's iconic right out of the gate. And then the America dance scene is also incredible.
Oh, amazing.
The Play It Cool, even though Play It Cool is an awful song in this context, the dancing for that was also really cool.
Okay.
The
Actually,
dancing is cool.
That's no. That's
a
really
hot
good
take.
That's a really good place to start. The cool song. What is it called? Keep it cool, play it cool.
Something like that.
Something like that. What a bizarre, like, contextually where this sits, where it's these people like trying. Obviously, it's like don't get caught. That's the whole deal. Play it cool. Like we weren't there. We didn't see anything. That's the deal. But these moments where they're just like bursting with trauma and just like fuck, and it's like shut up, keep it. Just like, oh, this is like really bizarre. It's just like we just saw our friend die. Yeah, shut up. And then there's just like dancing. Gorge.
Well, and I think
I kind of was obsessed with it.
I'm obsessed with it because I think it speaks really well to the Jets as characters and as just being awful problematic white men. Because like when you look at all of their songs that they sing, like they're talking about how cool they are. They're making up excuses for why they're shitheads, right? They know they're awful, right? The Officer Krupke song, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm just bad. Like, I'm not that way, officer. And it's like this whole thing talking about excuses. And it does have something to say about like how the system is fucked, right? But they are playing into that rather than trying to take themselves out of it, right? And then the whole Play It Cool song is about pushing down your emotions so that way like they seem in control and everything when like really, I mean, their friend just died, right? Their friend just died. Their other friend is now a murderer and is like, on the run. Like they are going through some shit, and rather than process anything, and they're also throughout the whole thing talking about how their upbringing isn't great and how like they, their parents are drunks or they have this. And so they have all of these things and all of this trauma that they're not working through. And instead they're just pushing it down and throwing that trauma onto anybody that looks at them the wrong way. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really smart to have that song the way that it was. And especially taking into context like all of the subject matter for all of their songs.
Yeah. It's one of those stories as a whole though that is like, I mean, obviously I get so bored and tired with the like, well, I just gotta fight. And you're like, oh, okay. Like really like
Same.
you could literally not fight and like you'd be fine. Like go home. Like literally just go home and you're fine. And even like I know that the whole thing is like, oh, fuck our families, our life sucks, we're kind of like dead end, whatever, we have to fight for our streets. And I get that. And also, sure. But also, chill out.
Yeah, I
maybe,
hate it.
maybe I don't know. Maybe fucking don't. Like I know that. Like Jesus.
One thing about that, and I think that it's a little bit lost in this production and a little bit less in the new one, is that these are all supposed to be like 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
So, it's you see them as like fully 30-year-old like actors and dancers like running around and leaping. So it's very hard to remember that in the moment. But
that the naivety of like somebody who is 14, 15 making these big choices about like it's life or death, or it's me or them. And I understand that in the context, but 100% from the visual of these actors, I was like, why is this 35-year-old talking about this? Like, this makes no sense.
Well, but in the next one, I think they're actually older, which made no sense because they're at a high school dance. But like Maria is 18. Like they make a point to say that, right?
Yeah.
So like they are coming into young adulthood. So like at least they look younger, but they don't look 35. But I'm just like, when the fuck is this supposed to be taking place? Like, I don't understand.
Boys are dumb is my takeaway. Boys are stupid and bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Masculinity
is a prison.
And performing that.
Yeah.
This is the musical.
Oh my God. Yeah, the performative masculinity of everything. It just felt like there is that level. Okay, I guess let's talk about the performative masculinity. The homoeroticism of that performative masculinity within this, I thought was super fascinating because there are these moments of like tenseness. And I know one of the throwaway comedic lines in the like our family's bad, we're bad people, what, I forget that. I feel like I need to be more well versed in the songs, but you know when they're each like my family's this and I'm a slub, boo, and like
and
that's
there's
the whole
deal. Trans line that's like, well, my dad wears a dress and this, and that's why I'm fucked up, right? And I'm like,
which I thought was funny. It's just like, oh, my family's queer, kill me. You're like, okay, this is cool. But I know that that's one of the only lines that kind of gets thrown in there as like queer representation, apart from obviously anybody who we'll talk about later. This line itself is played for laughs, duh. But I feel like as a group and as a whole, there are so many of these moments where it's like, I know there's a brotherhood. I know there's this like this intensity and this like familial, like we have to stick together. But because of the way that it is portrayed, like we talked about with the dancing and the sort of the closeness and the softness of like this choreo, it does read more as sort of like, at least with some of these dynamics, is like tense homoeroticism in a way that I thought was really interesting. Because like, granted, if we had just leaned into that, obviously it's 61, we're not leaning into that. But like, what if we had? That would have been so fascinating and fun. Like, because that also, I guess, to discuss the queerness of it, like anybody, like he's in here, like this is a part of the story. This wasn't like an add-on trans allegory or trans narrative that was thrown in the new one. Like his character is in the first one very clearly and eloquently, and he's like, I am not a girl, fuck you, let me be. And they're like, no, you're just a girl and a whatever and blah blah blah. Like, so it's there. They wrote a character into the story that is queer, right? I'm so interested in seeing like why more of that wasn't pursued. Obviously it's 61, but even then, like, why then throw that character in there? You know what I mean?
I think it's really interesting because this play, or musical I should say, was written and like not directed, but written, like the book, the lyrics, the music, and the choreography all by gay men. So the inclusion of anybody's as a character, I think, is a really interesting choice, whether or not it's, supposed to be, quote unquote, from their perspective, a trans character, because I doubt they had that language back then.
Yes.
But as a person who may be perceived as otherwise feminine in a masculine space, and is then not even like, in this experiences, masculinity the same way everybody does, directed at them and then reproducing it, their interpretation of it. So trying to be a jet. And what does that mean? Being the most fighty, like it's him. And I think there's like another one that's like, they're always like going at each other, but anybody's is the one who's the scrappiest, who is there to fight, who throws out insults. And like, we'll get to it in the remake one, but like even throws her own quote unquote own people under the bus, know.
Well, and they're also the one that like is actually out there gathering the information and has the intel, and is the only one that's actually doing anything to like support like the gang, which is just so fucked up, because I feel like in every scene we just see anybody's be shat on by everybody, just reminding them like, hey, you're not a dude, like you're not, like just trying to like tear them down at any point. And it's like, when you see the look of like, the only time I think we see anybody's happy is when Tony calls them buddy boy, right? Because they're recognized as male and as a part of the Jets in that moment, right, by the founding member, which I think that was go ahead.
I know. I mean, I love the gender affirmation. I love that it's meaningful, and I love that like it's like a moment of recognition and of affirmation. Like I'm super into that. But it really comes at like the most kind of nasty pivotal time where it's like anybody's has really literally almost just died so many times in the shadows secretly trying to gain this information, and is the only reason half of you aren't dead. Like they're literally the only reason like that this is happening, and only in this moment are you going to be like, I see you as the person you are, wink, and you're like, ew, go away. Like it's just like it's like the nastiest little moment. And I know it's supposed to be played for like, you're one of us, like you're a jet all the way, and it's like, yeah, I am, but like it just because of the placement of it, it feels so just like Ew. And it's one of my big problems with like the next one too, which we'll get into, but like I feel like they doubled and tripled down on that sort of shit. Anyways. Yeah.
I feel very similarly. So one thing I took note of that was really interesting is that anybody's response is you got it, daddy-o. So I mean, obviously this like patriarchal like figure in anybody's life, like clearly I got daddy's approval. Like it's the text of the film.
It's literally text.
And you know, it's I think the theme that a lot of this movie kind of dances around, which is like funny haha dances, but the proximity to power does not equal power. Anybody's is not going to be, you know, seen as a jet after Tony dies. That moment with Tony only meant that moment with Tony.
Yeah.
In the eyes of the wider world, anybody's is still a low-income youth, non-gender conforming, you know, assigned female at birth. All of these things are still true. And even though they had a small glimpse of what it could be like to be within that circle of power, to be a fully cis white guy in a cis white world, like it does not mean that they are actually that. They do not actually have any power in the world.
Yeah. I like that as a general conversation too, which they kind of, I feel like, dip into a little bit harder in the sequel, or not the sequel, but the next one. Just the again, it's the proximity to power does not equal power, where even, what is the cop's name? Krupke. When he like initially breaks up, I forget if this is in the original, like if this was text of the first one, but where he kind of talks about like yes, you look like this, but you stayed here. Your parents are shit, and you got left here. Just because you look like those in power doesn't mean that you will have that, because you are the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah, you're not them. You're not brown, but you still suck, and you're still seen as trash, and you're never going to amount to anything, no matter how close you want to get, no matter how powerful you think you are. You're never going to be me. You're never going to be anybody but the slum kids, essentially. And
that was in the second one. And that's one of the things that I did like about the second one was some of the context that we got. And I feel like there was a clearer message about like, hey, the sharks are bad. Hey, it was clearer and had more intent. Whereas this one, it just kind of like feels like it's putting this thing out there and not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
So, because in this one, I mean, in both of them, the cops are racist assholes. Even though in the next one, Krupke like really hates the fucking Jets, at least they're white, right? So there's a lot of times where he baits the Jets to say like, hey, which shark beat you up? Like, hey, you point him out. Hey, and then like once the sharks leave, he's like, in both of them, he's like, hey, I'm just trying to help you. Like, you can clean up the streets. Like, I could help you. You could clean up the streets for me. Come on, let's do this. Like, let's get them out of here, right? And I think that, like, here in this, the first film, it was just kind of a conversation that was, like, being thrown out there without really, like, any sort of, like, criticism or any sort of as much weight that should be given to that, right?
Yeah.
And in the next one, I think it does have more weight, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things in this one that they just put out there, like anybody's, like the cops, like, wait, Tony's a founding member? Like, I didn't believe that for a fucking second, you know? Like, there's all of these things that they're talking about, but they're throwing out these ideas without any sort of consideration or without trying to say anything.
Well,
it's like world. Yeah.
Not to demean like the skill, because I know that these are very talented people generally creating this story, but it does seem kind of accidental sometimes.
Yeah.
Or like we've sort of stumbled into an accidental theme about class. We've accidentally stumbled into a theme about power structure and dynamics of racism in late 50s, early 60s America. Like, we've accidentally done this because we're just trying to do Romeo and Juliet on the West Side. Like, that's kind of all we're trying to do, but it accidentally does that because they last minute changed it from Irish Catholics and Jews to Irish and Puerto Rican, and suddenly there's now this clash of racial dynamics in play, and it feels unintentional sometimes.
I totally agree. The ethnic differences and the choices to, you know, portray, you know, different ethnicities and nationalities feels like, and I mean, like you pointed out, famously, almost literally is just purely an aesthetic choice. They just
literally. Isn't that fucking wild?
It's
Isn't that
literally
crazy?
Yeah,
Jess, did you know about this?
Yes.
Isn't that nuts? Like, it blows my mind that it was just like this whole written play, and it was going to be this whole other thing called East Side Story, and then suddenly they
wait.
saw.
Okay, no, maybe I didn't know about this. Please
so when,
enlighten me and our listeners.
So when they wrote it initially, it was going to take place in the Lower East Side, and it was going to be it was Shakespeare-inspired Romeo and Juliet, but it was going to be between an Irish Catholic family and a Jewish family, and it was going to take place on the East Side during Passover, and that was going to be the whole thing. It was like this whole Easter conversation, blah, blah, blah. But it was too close to this other play apparently called Abby's Irish Rose that had come out recently. So they shelved it and was just sitting kind of away for several years until one of them saw a newspaper clipping of a fight that took place in San Bernardino in California about these
Shout
teenagers.
out.
Yeah, it was like Mexican teenagers who got into a fight outside of a community hall during like a teen dance, and one of them died. And suddenly that sparked, and they're like, what if the other family was Puerto Rican? And literally, then they just changed it. And then also famously, Sondheim, when asked, what was the quote? I need to find the quote. This is from a Los Angeles Times article, where Stephen Sondheim, then a rookie lyricist, was hesitant to sign on for the project because, quote, I've never been that poor and I've never known a Puerto Rican. But his agent told him not to think in those terms. They're star-crossed lovers. They are underprivileged, and the haves and have-nots have more to do with their psyches than their economics.
See, and this is a prime example of like
so
when writers or when the powers that be that decide that a TV show is going to be made decide that what we're going to do is we're just going to make the lead a woman, or we're just going to make the lead black and everything is fine, without like understanding how that would change the story, right? And that doesn't fucking work. That doesn't ever fucking work.
Also, some of the only research that they did to try to make it, big air quotes, authentic was go into the communities of Puerto Ricans at the time and watch their dancing and then incorporate some of those moves into the choreo. And that's like it. Which is...
I looked out my window and I just stared for a little bit. It truly is just like the most bizarre. Like Puerto Rican culture in this movie is truly set dressing. Like that's literally all it is. They did no work, even to the point where Sondheim, he's like this is his first big thing apart from like Saturday Night and some college stuff. This is his first thing, and he's even like, hey, I don't know if I should do this. Like, I've never been that poor. I don't know Puerto Rican people. They're like, Queen, just go. And he's like, okay. Like, it's so funny. And I feel like it reads on the screen so evidently because of that. Like, again, like I was saying, those accidental moments, like, I feel like, like that does feel like an accident because, again, it does not feel intentional. Yeah. And something about the dynamic between the Sharks and the Jets that I noticed in this version versus the newer one is that in the newer one, they go out of the way to make it explicitly ethnic or racially motivated, a lot of the tension between them. In this one, it is very much more like, clearly this is just about the gang. This is just about the street taking over. Even during their conversation with Officer Krupke and the detective whose name I keep forgetting, they ask him like, oh, like, you know, like you mentioned, who did this to you? And it's the Jets who redirect the question back to him. It's like, oh, I think it was a cop. A cop did it, actually. You know, like, again, covering for them only because it's like, this is our conflict, not the cop's conflict.
Yeah.
And like, if this isn't necessarily a racial thing, this is just about whose turf this is. And this needs to be settled by us. And so that kind of speaks to that, again, just superficiality. None of the power dynamics in play here. They're mentioned briefly in both versions, but none of the power dynamics on a larger scale, Puerto Rico being a colony of the United States, just the empire of the United States being a thing at all, just is completely absent. Just most people just didn't even know Puerto Rico had just become a commonwealth of the United States, let alone, why everybody was coming in from there. Like, why did the population of Puerto Ricans triple in New York over the course of like 4 or 5 years? Those white kids had no fucking clue, and neither did the playwrights.
These ignorant gays in the late 50s just being like, I don't know, just do it. Like, who cares?
This is 1960s version of pink tank top gay
Yes.
explaining the Ukraine
Oh.
conflict. This is that.
Stop. Oh my God. You're so right. That's what this musical largely is.
Yeah, it's a lot of very white, very insulated people making a story that is not theirs to tell.
Yes. They know that not even just their story to tell, but they literally know nothing about. Truly know nothing about.
Well, and I think that's why there's like nothing about the Puerto Ricans that like, I mean, I don't have a lot written down for them because, you know, they were just kind of there. I mean, I have the most about Anita, right? Like, but for the most part, like Bernardo and the other like shark men, they just want to control their women and they want to fight. Like that's all they want to do, and that's all that they are, you know. And they're like in that whole like America song, like the only thing that like they're really saying in that song is like, which one is a valid point. One is like, okay, cool. It is more expensive here and we don't have white skin. So things are not great for us here. It's only cool if you're white, which like, yes, absolutely. But then they're like, well, I mean, back home, women knew their place, right? And that's something that they doubled down on in the second one, which like tried to make that even more clear where they're talking about like Bernardo wants 84 children and Anita tells him to fucking marry a cat because she's not going to do that because she's an American woman now, you know? So like that's basically the Sharks in a nutshell is like we want to control our women and we want violence.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it feels.
They're not real. Like they're not real people. And obviously like it's all made up, but it's just like none of it felt actualized. I mean, structurally, plot-wise, I have the same issues that I had with, like, when we talked about Romeo and Juliet. I know they're kids, but, like, how infatuation will just, like, drive you to risking your life and the lives of all your loved ones. Like, I understand when you're young and those feelings absolutely destroy your brain and you're just, like, an absolute idiot baby who's horny and you're like, okay, cool. But similarly in the way that I'm like, just don't fight and everything will be fine. Again, they're kids. I need to remember that. I do also just struggle with like he sees her and he's like, I'm willing to die now. And you're like, shut up. Go to like, he's like singing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, we're going to get in trouble. He's like, not for me because I'm Tony and Maria. I love her and we won't. Let me talk to them about peace. I'm Bono. And you're like, shut up. Like, go. Like, it just. All of those moments, again, it's part of the story, but like, ugh.
He's just so convinced that everybody will like him and love him and that he is for everybody. And it's so funny because like in this one, he's saying that and Maria's like, no, okay, yeah, right? And it's just kind of implied that, yeah, that's fine. And that's how that works. Actually, we've cured racism, right?
Yeah.
And
it's like,
the
you go to church? That's it.
Oh my God, perfect. You've got it, right? And in the next one, like they say it like and there's one moment where Maria's like, no, that's actually not how that works. And she kind of like checks him. But other than that, she's like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's great. Like, and going back to your point, Eric, about like these characters not feeling realized, I 100% agree. Like when Maria finds out her brother is dead and killed by Tony, the person that she's supposed to love the most, she doesn't even give a shit about Bernard, right? And like, who's like her only family here other than Anita. And the only character, to me at least, that felt realized was Anita. I feel like Anita is such a strong woman and a strong character. And I think that she really carries the entire movie. 100%.
She is the only character that feels like that. And truly, to even to the effect of like, after that scene directly, her song, first line, he killed your brother. Like, hey,
yeah,
Queen, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why is he here? He killed your brother, you idiot.
So there's one correction I want to make, actually.
Oh, okay.
Bernardo is not her only family. She has a mother and father.
Oh, that's right.
There.
In this one,
yeah,
they're both
there.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
It's the absenteeism of the parents that's kind of like, one, I think partially a thing about, you know, teen movies in the mid 20th century. Mm-hmm. Adolescents going wild. Like, you know, that genre of film was such a real thing back then. So that makes that sense contextually. But also, I think kind of more, I guess a more, not sinister, but like, you know, it speaks a little bit more to just kind of the ignorance again, is just that they fully have parents who are there living in the same house as Maria and Bernardo, but they're just not around. And that's not explained. So you have to just, the audience that it was made for is then just left to assume whatever they're going to assume, which for 1960s white America is fill in the blank for whatever racial stereotype you have.
Literally. Which is just silly. I mean, granted, part of me was just like, oh yeah, it's like the Peanuts thing where it's like, well, they're there, but not really. Like, we don't really see them. They're not real. They exist, but like, this isn't about them. But especially for the way that this is written with some of these other, like, even the Sharks, the way that they sing about Puerto Rico, some of it's I'm like, well, a white person wrote that. That's like really,
like
really rough stuff.
hurricanes was one of the big things, right? Like, and I was like, okay, like what else do you know about Puerto Rico? Because they don't talk about anything culturally, right? Like in that song specifically, like the women are like, hey, look, we're in America. We have all of these possibilities. We can maybe own this. We have a washer and dryer. Oh my God. Like their narrative was like, we're in civilization now. And the Puerto Rican men were just like, oh, but like everything's expensive here, racism and stuff, which like they're super, super right. And like the Puerto Rican women are like full of hope, right? But it felt like that hope was again written by a white person that's like, oh, look, we're so civilized here. We have washers and dryers. Like their hopes are all about like being able to do their laundry and having a home, not about like having a career or doing anything like other than like homemaking.
And I mean, isn't there a line in the song too about like it's an island of tropic diseases or something?
Yes.
Like, which you're just like, well, like I don't think that it just feels so inauthentic. It feels like, oh, it feels okay. It's like the whole the Western gaze of Eastern conglomeration and sort of like the erasure of Asian identity. What is that called?
Orientalism.
Yes, Orientalism.
Of Said, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's just like that where it's just like, oh yeah, I don't know, like it's tropic. Like there's probably pineapples, sure. Diseases are probably on that island. Yeah, say that. And it's like, again, it's like a completely ignorant perspective that's based
what rhymes
rooted
with
completely.
this?
Yeah, exactly.
Pineapples, great.
Yeah, and I mean, specifically those lyrics were so offensive to Puerto Ricans that they had to change it for the movie. It was actually worse than the original stage production.
Really?
I forget what the original was, but yeah. So they changed it to, oh, Puerto Rico, my heart's devotion, let it sink back into the ocean. That was their compromise or their change to make it better. So it's like coming off the backs of being a colony for two different empires and then being annexed and given a false citizenship by the Americas so that way they can more closely control the capital of the island. That's what she says. Like, it's like, oh yeah, my poor little island that's been oppressed the entire time. Actually, we're the problem. It's not America. We're the problem here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, it's so
messy. It's so, and I mean, granted, what do we expect from like literally Brownface the musical? But also, it's just like, you were talking about how there's this performance of hope in like this America and sort of the facade of the American dream, especially as it's coupled with the way that women are presented. Like, well, here women are free. It's like, well, that's not true. Misogyny is everywhere. It's rampant worldwide. I mean, here specifically, it might even be arguably worse under a patriarchal system. Like, misogyny that is going to exist everywhere, and this sort of performance of like, well, it doesn't exist here. Women can do whatever they want. As it is also juxtaposed with that scene that we get later with Anita when she goes to the shop and is like assaulted by these men, where it's like this moment
I was so mad.
I know it's wild, and it also makes no sense. Like, what? Especially in this first one where there's no commentary on it. It just happens, and then she leaves, and then you're like, okay. Like,
they're grieving
what?
the death of their friend, and this Puerto Rican woman walks in who they just killed her boyfriend, right?
Yes.
And their first reaction is to make her feel so small by like intimidating her and then fucking sexually assaulting her. Literally fucking all of them. Fuck that.
Well, that's and that like exactly that juxtaposition of like the freedom in America versus like no matter what, like women are not going to have that autonomy, especially now, especially here, no matter what hope is present. But secondarily, like I don't think that that's an intentional thing. Like I feel like that scene just happens as a way to like make an ugly thing more ugly, without much like payoff, and then it's just like it happens to be a conversation about misogyny and autonomy of women in this space, but like again an unearned theme.
I would argue
I feel go ahead.
I would
Train out.
argue that while I agree, it is a very unintentioned theme about, misogyny that women experience and how no matter where you are, you're not going to be free of it, basically. There is an intentional theme of kind of moralism, a very rote 1950s like moralism. Because if you compare like the sexualities of the women that we see basically two women being explicitly sexual. You see Maria and Anita. Maria is in all senses but literal married to Tony when she has sex with him, and she is left otherwise unpunished. Anita has unmarried sex with Bernardo, and it's a very clear thing that she's very excited for. She's like, I'm getting ready for me. I'm going to wear my black orchid. I'm going to have a bath. I'm going to make myself feel good. And I'm going to have dinner with my boyfriend after he's all riled up after a fight. And then we're going to fuck and it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to tonight. And I'm like, yes.
And I was here for that. I was like,
Tonight's
yes, bitch.
And then what happens to the one woman who expresses any kind of sexuality? She is then intimidated and sexually harassed, which is, otherwise exactly what you'd see in any kind of moralist panic 1950s film about teens. You go and you have sex, you're going to get raped. You go and you hang out and you're going to have drugs, you're going to go crazy, you're going to get killed. Like, that's what they talk about.
Yeah, which is that early horror trope
right.
as well, right? Like the idea of the teens having sex, they need to be killed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
This, obviously this kind of like weird obsession with virginity that's just been around forever.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I hadn't connected those two, but yeah, that's 100% it. Like, that is the night. She's singing tonight. That is the night. And that's what she gets. That's what she gets for wanting to have sex.
Yeah. And presumably having had it before. I mean, they don't seem to like be,
Oh, she's fucked.
Anything.
She's somebody who's fucked.
She fucks a lot.
She fucks a lot. She fucks well. She's good. She's cool.
Yeah.
Like, she is such, like,
nobody who dances that good can't be good at sex.
It's true.
I also do think that part of the reason why that scene happened where Anita was like sexually assaulted was because that,
Motivates
first of all,
her.
fuck Maria for asking her to go there and do that. Fuck Maria so hard. Like, Anita is nothing but loving and caring and like the mother sister figure that like she's fucking there, and she pushes up against Bernardo and goes to bat for her every time. She's like, don't use your fucking sister as an excuse to start World War III. And also, don't fucking control her. She has a mom and a dad. You're not here for that. We're in America. She can have fun. Let her get hers, right? And he's still just being an asshole. But like, she goes to bat and she does this, right? And then the look on Anita's face when she sees Tony in that room was fucking incredible. And then even after that, and having this argument and knowing that your boyfriend just killed her boyfriend, I can't imagine if my boyfriend killed any of your boyfriends. Like, I would not. I would not.
First of all, if my boyfriend killed your boyfriend, it would not be it. No, but it's so true. Like, I mean, granted, murder in general, I think I'd be like, why is this guy
killed
here?
Anybody in general, I would be like, okay, look, I don't want anybody to be an accessory. Holy shit!
Get it out of the way. I don't approve of murder. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah,
proud.
Let's all be brave. Let's all be brave
pod.
today on the pod bravery hour.
No, but like, seriously, like, fuck her for doing that. And then she goes there, she gets sexually assaulted, and it's inadvertently Anita's fault. Like, the way that it's written, it's Anita's fault that Tony dies, right? Because then
the cascading domino effect.
Yes. Yeah, right? So it's like, oh, well, she shouldn't have said that she was dead. Like, no, she shouldn't have been sexually assaulted. Also, her boyfriend shouldn't have been killed. Like, there's so many things, but like, it really comes down to her being, and I think it also comes full circle for her as a character, where this whole time she's talking about hope living in America, and that she sees like this dream, and she has, this idea of what life is going to be like there. And literally America takes fucking everything from her, right? And in that moment, she's like, no, fuck this, fuck you, fuck everybody, I'm out.
She's big Ginsburg energy. She said Ginsburg. Sorry. No, but it's
white gays coming back around.
Literally, white gays come back.
Come in
Come
full
on.
circle.
Sondheim would be proud. No, okay. But no, he died. Anyways. Yeah. It is so true. Like, I don't know. That whole scene. I love that scene. I love Anita. why the fuck is he there? I truly, like, I know that they're kids, and this is truly something I will not get over, the fact that he gets there and she's not immediately like, leave my house. I know she does the whole performance of like, murderer, 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 you killed him, I'm sad, but then instantly it's sort of like, wait, now that's over. What are you doing? Like, should I show you my belly? Like, what are we, and you're just like, what changed? Like, this is so bizarre. Like, I don't.
It's very interesting because, I mean, if we look at like Romeo and Juliet, Tybalt is her cousin or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, still real tore up about it. I mean, understandably.
Yeah.
But a cousin and a brother are an order of magnitude different, really.
Correct.
Especially with this, like, you know, if we look back at like the original context, like huge families, all extended family living all kind of in the same kind of compound. Like, it's very different than like, I live with him. He's next door and he's the only family besides my parents.
And it also seems very weird that like that kind of like, literally your brother, your whole life, suddenly you meet this one boy who you think is hot 2 days ago. And that infatuation is so powerful that it like kind of just diminishes the idea that like, oh no, he murdered my brother, but I'm still ready to fuck.
Also, something that's interesting that didn't quite register with me until I watched it again was in the new version, which we'll get to, Maria is the one who's settled and been in America before Bernardo. And in this version, it's the opposite. Bernardo's been here. Maria's just arrived, I don't know exactly how long ago, but relatively recently, because he's introducing her to all of the friends at the dance. Like, oh, this is my sister Maria, etc. They're really selling her naivete. And obviously, like, that all kind of warps together to create this image of femininity, like the white dress, like, oh, I'll be a little baby, and only babies wear white, and she's also like a bride, she waits until marriage. All of that stuff kind of creates this image of femininity that, like, you know,
and the submission too.
Yeah, and submissiveness, and it's just generally just is a very tight encapsulation of like what, not heroic or, you know, a heroine, like, but like what a good girl would be, I guess, back then.
She's small, she's mousy, she's soft-spoken.
She's forgiving. She's so forgiving.
She's very, she's very pleasant. She's well-mannered. Like, all of these things that as women we're told to be, right? And again, above all, submissive, right? She asks Anita to lower the neck of her dress. She could probably do it herself, right? But does she do it? No, she asks permission. No, that doesn't work. She asks Bernardo permission for all of the things, and she doesn't get it. Okay. And then as soon as she like finds like a dude, like she's like, great, you, awesome. What are we doing? When are we going to meet? Where are we going to go? Yes, great. Let's go. Let's escape. Right. And in that scene that we were just talking about where Anita comes in, Tony bounces, there's this whole song that the two of them are at odds, and then at the end they both come together and they say, when love comes so strong, there's no right or wrong, which is absolutely incorrect. Right? But
wait,
again,
what do you mean?
as a woman,
Jess.
this
I
is
feel
Jess,
that
would you
way.
describe yourself as a romantic?
Excuse me.
this is the shit that we're told. Like, oh, it's fine. Like, as long as you love him and he loves you. Like, there's this portrait of love that young girls are like subjected to that like is really damaging. And that's why, like, I mean, at least personally, I stayed in an abusive relationship for a really long time because I was like, okay, well, he loves me, and or, you know, and love is like, that's what's said, right? But that's not what's actually shown, right? And so it's like, well, you can't help who you love is like this whole thing that a lot of people still fall back on, right? And it's so fucked up because you absolutely do have a choice. You can leave. This is bad for you. There is a right and wrong. Like, that line over everything else was just like, this is such a bad example for literally everybody, but plays into what you were saying, Chris, about like 1950s, 1960s, like ideals, like expectations of women and what they're supposed to do, right? And how they're supposed to exist. Like, so
I mean,
they're talking about, in this whole thing, they're talking about like, oh, we want to be free, but literally they're both subjected to the whims of the men in their lives.
This just goes into my whole sermon about like, let people be more sluts, like let us be sluttier, because truly, and I mean this in like the most earnest way possible, that young feeling of like, I'm in love. No, you're just horny. Like, you're infatuated. You want to have sex. Like, that's what's going on. And sometimes that can develop and manifest, but you're so young and you're going to grow and you're going to grow apart. And that's probably just what's going to happen. And sometimes early on in these relationships, sometimes just a good sex. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, my eyes are clear now. You're a bad person. I'm out.
Post-nut clarity.
Let's, you know what I mean? Post-nut clarity.
100%.
Post-nut clarity. Let people be sluts. End of sentence. Like, I feel like that would solve so many problems. Because then it's so much easier to distinguish between love and infatuation and the obsession of horniness and the obsession of, like, early excitement and the infatuative period. Like, it really just alleviates all of the pressure of that when it comes to, like, well, we have to be together to have sex and we have to be in love. And it's like, shut up. Go fuck. Jesus. Yeah. It's so easy. Like, come on. Yeah, I think we should talk about the next one.
Yes, you should.
Okay. Cue music. In 1950s New York, two rival gangs, the Jets, a group of white boys, and the Sharks, a group of Puerto Rican boys, are struggling for control of the Upper West Side. One day, Riff, the Jets' leader, decides it's time to have a rumble with the Sharks to determine control of the streets once and for all. Riff enlists Tony, both a founding and ex-member of the Jets, to be his right hand at the War Council to challenge and discuss terms of the rumble with the Sharks. Instead, Tony ends up falling in love, big air quotes, with a young woman named Maria, who happens to be the sister of Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks. Eep! Bernardo and his girlfriend Anita have an argument about their life in America. Meanwhile, Maria and Tony fall deeper in, big air quotes, love, despite their different backgrounds, and decide to try to end the violence between the Jets and the Sharks.
Tony ends up convincing the gangs to disallow weapons at the Rumble, which they bring anyway, then tries to stop the fight from happening altogether, which leads to Bernardo killing Riff and then Tony killing Bernardo. Whoops! Anyways, Tony goes to Maria, who's bummed her brother is dead, but also super stoked that Tony is alive, and the two plan to run away together. Devastated by Bernardo's death, Anita goes to Maria for comfort, but finds her in bed with the man that killed him. Whoa. She reluctantly agrees to help them escape, but is sexually assaulted by the Jets in the process. Incalculably upset, she lies to everyone, claiming Maria is dead, which sends Tony to seek his own death. But wait, Maria's actually alive and holds Tony as he dies. Wow. The end.
Wow, the end. Okay, so
those are my words.
Wow, the end. So kind of picking up where we left off, again, very similar stories. There are some subtle differences that, to me, at least make this a much better version of a bad story. One, I mean, it's not really a huge point, but I thought it was really funny. Initially, one of the first things we see is like them like coming together and doing their dance, blue, blue, blue. But they do kick over the men working sign, which is sort of funny because it does feel a little bit like, okay, what's the opposite of men working? Boys not working. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it feels like a funny, like, like, I don't know. It's obviously means something, but.
Not only are they not working, but they're not working on themselves.
Yeah. They're like, fuck growth.
Yeah.
And they kick it right over. And that's one of the first things we say, and I'm like, oh, good, okay, the Jets are stupid and bad and toxic and shitty. They're boys. They're little bad people.
And, you know, one of the biggest differences right off the bat is right here in the beginning, where, as in the first one, or the original, I should say, the Jets and the Sharks, their turf war is explicitly just about their turf and just about being a Shark or being a Jet. Whereas in this one, they go out of their way to be like, this is ethnic, racially charged violence. Yeah. Like, we're going to deface the Puerto Rican flag and, like, a slogan about Puerto Rican independence. Like,
yeah.
Insane.
It's like it's them walking by, it's the cat calling, it's the sign they pull down, and it's like it reveals the Irish bar sign. It's very clear that they're distinguishing this as more of a conversation about race.
And that the Jets are fucking assholes. There's no like, oh, they're just boys, but like, which like I don't.
Oh, but they do that too.
They do. Yeah. Like, but in the beginning, at least they're trying to set up context for, rather than just like, oh, they're a bunch of cute boys that are just kind of like hanging around, right? Like, there's like this distinct difference that for some reason my brain picked up on, where in the first one, there's the child that's like, you know, drawing with chalk, and they walk around her, and in this one they walk through it, right? They like fucking stopped her and like, eh. Oh, yeah. So it's like they were trying to set them up to be that way, but you're right, like they like through the movie, it's just kind of like forgotten about a little bit.
Well, this is kind of one of the things that I like, though, kind of touching on that a little bit, is there is a delineation or a very stark difference between not just like two groups. It's very clear that like the Sharks have to do it to survive to some degree, and the Jets are just stupid racists. Like, just from the perspective of, like, the Jets the entire time are consistently just like, when you're a Jet all the way. Like, that resonates in such an ignorant, like, silly, like, oh, we're children way. Whereas with the Sharks, especially with Bernardo, the moment when Chino, like, we first see him, we didn't really talk about him much, but he has a much more, like, defined existence in this one. When he initially shows up, he keeps talking to him about, like, let me be a shark. I want to be a shark. Let me do it. And his response is essentially like, no, it's stupid. You don't want to be a shark. It's stupid. I have to do it, but I know that it's stupid, and you shouldn't do it because you're smart. Please don't do this. Like, which I appreciate that there's a delineation between a recognition that, like, this childish sort of violence, like, I have to do it for our livelihood to keep us safe from these racist assholes. Like, I get it, and it sucks. You're good. You're going to do great things. You're smart. Please go be smart and, like, get out of here because you don't have to play the game. I, unfortunately, have to play the game. So that's why you're not going to do it. End of story. And I like that. Like, it's not huge, but it's a huge moment in context land just to, like, kind of give more of a humane perspective, or, like, it gives more of a humanity to the Sharks in a way that they didn't have in the first one, because it is very clear that, like, they have to do to survive. I just like that line. I thought it was great. It was a nice little addition.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I also really liked Chino's character much better in this one. I liked the things that I liked about this movie was the context and the playing of context, or like the insertion of context, like especially for the characters. I liked that Tony went to jail because he beat the shit out of somebody and almost killed them, right? Yeah. I believed more so that he was a founding member, right, and was trying to get out of that. I loved the recontextualization of Doc. I loved that Rita was in this. I think that she still shined, and I thought that was cool. I also really liked the reordering of the songs and the recontextualization of them. So, like, the Stay Cool was before the fight, right? Where, which I think that was a better place for it to be, because it was, instead of the Jets talking about, like, having to, like, suppress their emotions, they're trying, like, Tony's trying to say, like, hey, no, let's calm down, maybe think about this. You don't want this. I liked that. And there was, like, Doc sang one of the songs, like, There's a Place for Us, which I think was also really great. So I think some of those changes were really great. However,
and I Feel Pretty. The fact that they put that literally at the fucking end, when that's in fact, like, that's after night one. Like, I met this boy and I'm elated. No, now it's like right before I find out that my brother's dead, I feel pretty. And I liked it more in this placement because it does feel a little bit more sinister. Like, wow, it's been like a week and, like, my life is changing, and, like, I've really kind of been in this place for a little bit, and there's hope now, and I can feel it, and we've seen it. And then suddenly it's like, no, your brother's dead and your boyfriend did it. Like, oh no.
Wait, hold on.
JK, lol.
Something that did fall flat, I think, was they were trying to have, when Maria meets Tony, they tried to, like, insert a little thing of, like, consent, like, try to be like, oh, is this okay? Is it okay that I'm not Puerto Rican and I'm I'm hanging out with you, right? Like, they tried to have, like, oh, yeah, it's okay, it's fine, like, you know. So they're kind of navigating that, and then Maria, like, throws herself onto him. But, like, in that conversation, knowing that actor that plays Tony and the accusations and just his behavior that was happening, like, you know, that has recently come to light, I was like, wow, this is really fucking awful. You guys know about that, right?
Wait, what? No. What's happening? Is there Ansel Elgort drama?
Yeah. You're Googling, going to the Google machine.
Sorry. Okay.
So for him to
Vulture did an article where it's the timeline of his sexual allegations.
The timeline, yes. And we will link that in the show notes. Because that happened simultaneously while this movie was coming out, like, or at least the accusations were coming to light. So they didn't even address it. Of course, they just swept it under the rug and tried to pretend that it didn't happen. But he was, like, trying to solicit sexy pictures from underage girls, trying to meet up with them, and just being an overall creep.
Sex pest.
Okay. I don't know the history, but this seems really gross. So part of his legal defense in these allegations was they weren't underage because the age of consent in New York is 17.
Yes, and the other one, it was like, in another state, it was like 16 or something. I
I don't mean to be like, but that seems like it got changed because men are fucking gross.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a law that was like changed for like, because it's happened so many times. Like, no, she was 17, she was so close. It's like, what if we change like that feels, I did not know that about New York, and that seems nasty.
It's
More
pretty,
like Ansel L. Gross.
Yeah. So
Got
when
it.
they're having this conversation about consent and all this, I'm like, you know. And it's not even a big conversation about it. It's like a footnote, but I was like, file that away. I'm going to talk about that on the pod.
Yeah. What a fucking crumb ass. That sucks.
I mean, also piggybacking off that a little bit, there's the initial scene, like with the fire escape, where she's like, "I'm telling you to leave," like very clearly.
Yes.
And he just keeps going.
Yeah.
I mean,
And also-
it is a little creepy. Like, I went to a dance, I met a very nice boy, and now I'm home now. And oh my God, he's outside my window.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Yeah, she tells him no, like explicitly, and he doesn't listen to her. And then then she's like, she of course warms up and is like, oh my gosh. But like, then because like the way the fire escape is, she can't get down, and like he can't get up unless he goes outside of it. But then it's like, great, she's like a caged bird now. She's just cool. We're actually inserting this.
Yeah, he literally cannot grab her because she is blocked by a boundary.
Pretty literal imagery, actually, now that you point that out.
Yeah.
It's literally a cage.
She's literally in a cage. I want to talk about a little bit more about anybody's character in this. I feel like, and this was my one big note, I feel like they wanted to do more of a queer narrative by including not only like a non-binary actor in the role of anybody's, but by including this character more often, like kind of throwing them in just in a scene, and like we're watching them kind of be in the background existing in a story. But like throwing a queer character more, like putting them in a more profound way would have worked, but you just like showed us more trauma. You showed us more violence. You showed us more like shit. Like we're not seeing anything of them, like them being harassed by the police, them literally being beat up by their friends. Like the extra stuff that we're seeing is literally offering us nothing more than just violence. Like that's all we're seeing.
They talk about pantsing anybody's, and they like kind of like throw that around as like a way to not recognize their gender, right? They're like, oh well, we checked, actually we straight up pulled your pants down and you don't got the equipment down there, so you're not a dude. And it was like
the follow-up line to that too is the dickless wonder biological disorder. Like I don't understand why this is the inclusion. Like I know that you think visibility is important, and it is, but in this context, like no, you did nothing but just show us more trash. Like you did nothing for this character, and nothing for their narrative, and nothing for queer people. Like you just made it worse.
There's still the most capable, the most knowledgeable, and the kindest, where they're the only ones that go back to help Tony escape the crime scene, right? And also, when Anita walks into the shop, they're like, no, don't do this. There's that moment where they lock eyes and anybody says like, yo, don't. And but then again, like they're powerless to
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I did notice, I feel like one thing that they tried, I feel like a little bit, because, and this is a very low amount of effort, but like you said, they throw anybody's in all the time, but what you see is more, I think, explicitly the sense of like longing in anybody that is present clearly in the first one, I keep saying first one, but in the original version. And
in West Side Story 1.
In West Side Story 1.
The prequel.
And now West Side Story 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah,
we see anybody's, you see, literally you just have shots of anybody's just staring longingly at Tony and at the other Jets. And it's more, I feel like it's more clearly towards Tony specifically. So it's this kind of like, you can tell that there's a certain sense of like, I want to be you, that I feel like it doesn't have this, like, you don't have that same sense in
Yeah.
the original.
Well, I will also say to add to that, there is one specific moment at the beginning of the dance. The way that Tony interacts with anybody's is completely different from every other Jet. Like, Tony embraces anybody. He's like, hey, like, there's a positive, like, it's good to see you. I like there's a warmth to the way that Tony's responds to anybody's, and even the way that anybody's just like, it's Tony, fuck yeah, it's Tony, yeah, hey, what's up, like, I miss you. It's very clear that Tony sees anybody's as a person, as a queer like, just in general as a person, in the way that literally everybody else is like, no, you're bad and gross and your brain's broken or whatever. Like, their whole thing is anti anybody's, and Tony's the only one who's like, no, what's up, hey, you're a Jet, sure, whatever. Like,
Yeah, and I actually got, like, in the first one, I didn't understand why anybody's was even trying to be around in this space where they are not wanted and they're just abused, because it didn't seem like anybody was actually nice to them. Where in this one, it's like, okay, like, Tony recognizes and isn't an asshole to them. You know what I mean? But, like, still, it's like, like,
it's hard, because really the inclusion, it's really just more scenes of, like, and I know that it's just trying to set the scene, like, yeah, queer people weren't really allowed here, but it's like, we knew that, like, we don't have to, like, that's not something you need to tell us, like, we know this by the way that the Jets treat anybody's. Like, you don't have to show the cop harassing them at the dance. You don't have to show the Jets beating them up in the fucking police hall.
The cop putting them on the women's bench.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like at every moment they were trying to be like, and I know that this was a big fucking pat on the back where they're like, oh, look, this is a trans character. We're going to put somebody in this role that is from the community and it's going to be so great. And then look, we're actually going to put them in more. But, like, you're so right, Eric. Every time that they're on screen, it's just harassment or blatant misgendering for the sake of harm, right?
Yeah, like, and I'm all about, like, yeah, hire more queer actors, hire more gender nonconforming actors, but also
we don't need abuse narratives.
Oh yeah, get rid of abuse narratives, and secondarily, like, have more queer centric stories, so it's not like, well, this character was historically queer, like, let's just throw them in. Like, no, just, you don't got to do that in West Side Story. Fuck West Side Story. Do a different movie, and then, like, hire more queer people and have a more or a less abuse driven queer narrative. Like, we do not need to keep doing that. And the way that I feel like in this movie, patting itself on the back, that's going to be stuck in my head, because truly this movie tries to do that so much. In this,
it's Steven Spielberg. Like, I mean,
yeah, the scene where it's like, you done good, buddy boy. I feel like the way that was shot was supposed to be so, like anybody's reaction to that was like,
so agog.
Like, it was supposed to be so grandiose and like so meaningful, and like, wow, they really did that. Wow, Steven Spielberg, file that under things he did do. Like, way to go. You know what I mean? It felt so gross, and I'm like, ew, no, you don't get this big reaction because you showed more trauma. Like, go away.
Right.
It just made me mad. I was like, this is dumb.
Yeah. You know, the inclusion of anybody is a little bit more, and, you know, again, just kind of like, it's an aesthetic inclusion, you know. I think does something interesting, though, in that it really highlights the kind of, like, because, like you said, like, yeah, you're right. Like, the interaction between Tony and anybody's is way more friendly, warm. Like, it's much more of a, you know, at least, you know, there's a relationship there, as opposed to the other one where they interact by accident, kind of mostly, until the end, which is also kind of an accident. But it kind of highlights just kind of like this kind of homosocial, like, setting that we're in. Because for the most part, in this one and in the other one, whenever that there's an interaction happening of consequence, the women are ushered away. It's like, this is time for men to be together. And there's always, again, these, like, you know, that, you know, famous quote, it's like, you find elaborate rituals and ways to touch other men's bodies. And that's what that feels like. It feels like where there's a space and a need for these men to connect with each other, these young boys to connect with each other, but there's no socially prescribed way to do that. So they instead turn to violence. And an alternative is to, you know, not to stigmatize feminine things, or, you know, just caring, comfort, things like that, you know, like hugging another person that's part of your gang is we noticed it because it's the only time it happens. And when it doesn't happen, it's always layered with like either fake violence, like, oh, we're just tussling, we're roughhousing, you know?
Like, I want to touch your balls, but I'm gonna punch them.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
I'm gonna do it with my knuckles.
And you're like, what? Ew, what? Yeah. No, what are you doing?
Or it's layered under like jokiness, like I'm playing at it with you, like this is play as opposed to just.
It's not earnest.
It. Yeah,
yeah.
None
earnest. Of this is earnest. It's performative, and so that's why I can touch you because it's like a joke.
Yeah. And so you have to wonder, like, seeing that interaction between the two of them, like, would that interaction have been possible with any other character if they just had kept anybody's at the same level, like, as the original? Like, I don't think so. Like, him and Riff kind of have the closest relationship to that, but even then, again, always underneath, like, a layer of performance.
Yeah.
Totally.
What a silly game masculinity is.
I do want to talk about the women in this movie versus the women in the last film, other than Anita, of course, because Anita is wonderful. But in this one, I feel like in the same way that like anybody's was more around, the women were more around, and I feel like they had more speaking parts. And by women, I mean anybody outside of Maria, Anita, and now Doc, which I want to talk about later because Doc is great. But like Graziella had speaking parts, which is cool. And you see that all of the women, all of them, are way more against violence and try in some way to protect each other and themselves from men and from the violence and control of men. Like we already had that with Anita and Maria, right? But in this one, I feel like there's first when the sex worker locks herself up away from the jets when all of the cops rush out, right? She's like, fuck you guys, I'm getting in here, and literally locks herself in a cell because she's like, I'm not about this and you guys are awful and I'm not going to give you an opportunity to be awful from me, because she knows who they are. She knows what kind of people they are, right? And so she's just like, no, I'm removing myself from this.
The way she does it too is so casual. Like they're just like in the middle of something. She's like, okay, I'm done, and then she just gets up, goes in, locks.
Super casual. It's like nothing. Yeah,
I'm not gonna even. It's not going to be an issue because I'm not.
It felt very no sudden movements to me. Like I'm going to not say anything. I'm just going to move away and then just hope for the best is what it felt like.
She removed herself from the situation. Yeah. She locked herself in because she knows that they can't be trusted. And she was like, great, now do whatever you want to do because I'm not going to be a part of that. And I'm not going to allow you to even entertain doing anything with me. And then I also liked that Graziella and the other woman, I don't know her name, she didn't really have any speaking parts, tried to help protect Anita when the men are trying to, when the Jets are like trying to harass her. They're like, hey, stop, like, hey. And then they get ushered out, right? And they're like kind of banging on the door and trying to be like, no, don't do this, like trying to get her the fuck out of there. And then ultimately, like, isn't it Doc that comes up and is like, what the fuck are you doing? So again, like the first one, I don't feel like Doc made any sense. I was like, why are you letting all these kids that are in a gang use your store as like a front for like all of their violence and all of this, like when you don't support it at all? So Doc, I feel, made more sense here. But like also like Doc was like, I've seen you guys grow up, and now I see that you've grown up into rapists. Get the fuck out of my store. Yeah. Like the power that and influence that Doc has in this story in general, I really, really liked it. And I think that this is a really good character for Rita Moreno to be in. You know, I just think it's cool that she was in the first one and was the best character in that. And she's in this one. And again, she is one of the best and strongest characters in that. And she actually gets to be herself rather than having to, you know, paint her skin.
Yeah. If they were going to leave the sexual assault scene in, I do like what they did for it. I don't think it's a necessary scene, but the fact
I wanted
that she's
it fucking out of there.
Yeah. It's not a necessary scene. I understand that it's like for that juxtaposition, like you had talked about, Chris, for the tonight, the ultimate tragedy of like the exact opposite of what you wanted for Anita. But if they were going to leave it in, which they did, which at least there is that commentary on it of like, you know what? Fuck you guys. You guys are literally rapists, and I hope you're crying, and I hope you're sad, and I hope you feel like shit because you should, because you guys are worthless. You guys are not even people to me anymore. You're pieces of shit. Get fucked. Peace out. Like, I hate you. And you're like, great, perfect. That's all we needed. We just needed like, if you're going to leave it, you need somebody to at least call it out and be like, you fucking cowards. You guys are nothing. You're nothing. Like, to make that choice, you mean nothing to me, to the world. You deserve nothing. Like, you're like, yeah, good. Say, I mean, I wish she had said more. Like, really?
Totally.
I know it was like I wanted a diatribe. I wanted a monologue. I wanted a breakdown. Like, I wanted more. She said rapists. Cool. Like, there's an addressal. We see the tear in one of the boys' eyes. Like, we see some feeling. We see some semblance of movement. Obviously not enough for me, but cool. They did it.
In a way, it's also like her saving herself because she did play that character in the last iteration, which
Literally, yeah.
I think is kind of cool on a meta level. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that if they were going to leave it, this needed to be a bigger conversation. It needed to be more.
It's an unnecessary scene.
They didn't need to have that. And I really, and you know, we talk about this all the time on the pod, but you have choices when you're making when you're doing a remake, right? And that's one of the exciting things. It's like there are some fucked up things, or there are some things that you have a choice, right? And it was a choice to leave this in here, right? And it was a choice to have Maria be so fucking self-centered that she is still going to ask Anita to go to Docs in the first place, right? The audacity, like, and I think that's something that we don't really get into in either iteration, but like the self-centeredness of these two characters, right? Where like we see that they're naive, yes, but like to literally ask somebody to go and give this message to the person that killed their fucking, like, no, I would go off, like, and like it still feels, for as intentional as they're trying to be, it still feels tone deaf. I mean, even like, you know, great, they have like Puerto Rican actors, you know, playing, like, awesome. They have a trans person, great. They have like all of these things that they're trying to pat themselves on the back for, but I feel like even like the Puerto Rican culture really didn't shine as well as I wanted it to. Like, it still felt very whitewashed, and it still felt like I liked some of the context that we got for, like, you know, the characters, for Chino, for, you know, the way that some of the subtle reimaginings for all of these characters happened, but still it felt whitewashed. It felt disingenuous. And I think that's one of my big issues and takeaways from this.
Base text, it's still bad. Like, no matter how many times you try to like change whatever context, this main story is still just like not good, appropriative white nonsense.
Yeah.
And like, it's just going to stay that way no matter how many times it gets remade. The more I think about it too, and this just makes me even more sad, and like this sort of misguided Valentina character, the fact that she's like turning him in at the end, I feel like that aligns more with just like the pro cop, pro justice system, pro justice of the like American perspective in this way that like only rich people really ascribe to. Because again,
why didn't she turn in Tony? Literally, yeah. And that's like, it does not make sense. But then when you think about it, you're like, oh, this is like actually really gross and toxic and like not good. For as much as they're trying to say about class and about race and about struggle and about like about everything, as much as they're trying to say, it just like ultimately says nothing, if not says worse things. Because Chris, like you were saying, the more you get like it's like putting a magnifying glass on characters that weren't real, and suddenly you see they're real, and you're like, oh shit, I don't want to see them. No, take it away. Like, actually leave them. Instead of nuance, they just created noise.
Oh yeah, that's what we say. That's right. Instead of nuance, it's noise. Oh God, we're so smart. You're so
really
smart.
are.
All right, speaking of patting ourselves on the back.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, but we deserve it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like this one specifically, because it goes out of its way to do so many extra things, like specifically calling on the history of Puerto Rico as a place. Like, it calls on that, but it doesn't actually contest, like, it doesn't actually grapple with it. Like, in the beginning, you see that mural get destroyed, and it's a specific mural, and I looked it up, and it's literally by an anti-colonial Puerto Rican independence like fighter who also fought for like Irish independence, like a specifically anti-colonial sentiment by an anti-colonial activist, and I think a scholar as well. And the song that they sing at the cops, which I think is the same song that they sing in the original version. However, there's a specific difference amongst the versions. And the version that they sing in this one is a very specific version that is from the Puerto Rican Revolution, trying to basically free itself from colonial ownership by Spain and from America. And so the fact that they use that to kind of ground it specifically in the historical Puerto Rican experience is just completely undermined by the rest of the film. Like, none of that struggle, none of that strife for freedom is what's centered in the movie. It's about, you know, a bunch of other stuff. That's Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet's a bunch of other stuff.
And they're trying to fit in, right? Like, that's a big narrative, is they're trying to just fit in with America and find their place, when, like, why would they do that? Like,
yeah, like it's true that there's a historical basis for assimilation and all that stuff, but the story isn't about that. The story isn't about Puerto Ricans. It's not about immigrants. It's about Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. And what's really gross too is that in this one too, they even added in a reference to OK Corral. Like, we're going to have a shootout at the OK Corral when they're talking about the Rumble. A literal explicit reference to Western expansion and Manifest Destiny. The justification for a litany of genocides and wars and just the worst shit imaginable America's ever done. And that's what they use. Like, it's a throwaway line. It is a cardboard cutout of the West. It is the playground of, like, the white perspective. It's just, these are all set dressings. It might as well just be cardboard. Of New York in the 50s with Puerto Ricans, it's just cardboard. Like, they put a Puerto Rican flag. They referenced real historical Puerto Rican stuff, but to no end, because this story isn't about them. It's not for Puerto Ricans. It's not for anybody but the white audience for who it was made to sell tickets. It can be subversive, kind of, but only so much. And only as long as it sells.
And that's also the bigger conversation about, like, and I know we can't really fully get into it, but musical theater. And who's it for, right? Like, who oftentimes are these musicals for as a conversation about class, and oftentimes who is affiliated with that class? White people. It's stories that are predicated on whiteness and the white gaze, and rich Westerners looking at the otherness of, I mean, the South Pacific.
To me,
like that kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you can't, it's not real and it's not realized. And again, it comes down to the crux of this story. And I was laughing because you were like, what is this story about? And in my head, I was also trying to be like, yeah, what is this story about? Wait, hold on. You're like, it's about, I was like, I truly also don't know. Like, Romeo and Juliet. I guess that's, okay, cool. That's it. That's all it is.
And I think it literally is just about Romeo and Juliet. It's not about what Romeo and Juliet was about. Romeo and Juliet was explicitly about two houses equal in dignity. Like, there is no literal difference. They're in the same fucking city. They're the same fucking family, ostensibly. This is just about what is a useless conflict, what a tragedy this is. Not about anything else. It just talks about that.
And then this is just about that story.
Yeah. And like you said, Jess, it's not nuance, it's noise. It muddles the theme. This is no longer about those things, because now those things aren't relevant anymore because the context and power dynamics are so different.
The more we talk about this movie, the more I hate it.
I know,
like,
me too.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of it was just, like, again, supposed to be like, oh, here, white audiences, and then, like, look at, we fixed the trans issue. Look at, we're talking about gentrification, but then have fucking nothing, like, referencing it later, right? Just, like, look at how woke we are, but, like, not doing any work to, like, actually, other than, like, presenting an idea and then just letting it, like, dissipate. You know what I mean? Like,
and they could have done something interesting with that, but then that would be a different movie. That would be a different musical.
Yes. And they did not have the courage to do that.
No, it literally, like, I love that we have the same conversations about, like, new stories. Come on.
Why Steven Spielberg? Did he decide that he was the one that needed to tell this story, and that this, out of everything, because he could do anything that he wants and everybody would be like, yes, 100%. Why is this his story to tell? Why did he decide that this is what he wanted to hang his hat on, and this is the project that he needed to be a part of?
Well,
You know
think
what I mean?
I honestly think it just has everything to do with lineage and history. Like, he wants to tie his name to a classic in the way that he has created these
Sure.
classics. So to him, it's like, well, it's West Side Story. It's Natalie Wood. Like, it's West Side Story. Like, hello, hi. Like, I have to do, you know what I mean? Like,
Of course.
Because of course it's West Side Story. Well, of course it's West Side Story. I have to do West Side Story. Like, no, it's a bad story. Like, I don't, like, just because it was popular, I don't know. That's why I think personally he did it. I mean, granted, visually, was it gorgeous? It was beautiful and it was so well shot. And I do, like, I will stand by that. Like, it was just such a gorgeous movie, so well done. But again, completely undermined by the text. The text is nothing and garbage and trash, and anything that they try to do to like bandage it, again, does nothing to the base of the story.
Yeah. And the music is good. Like, let's
And
not.
the music's good.
The music is really catchy. Like, I can't fault any of that either. Too.
Yeah.
Just wanted to shout
And
that out.
yeah, Sondheim killed it. Obviously problematic, but like killed it. Same with the choreo. The choreo in this was like also good. Like, there was so many elements of like craft and like excellence in craft in this, obviously. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to like the crux of the story, and it sucks. Fuck West Side Story.
All right, so we're back.
Hello.
We did it. We made it back from the west side, the upper west side.
Whoa. We are back.
Eric, the 1960s West Side Story. Who was this film for?
It's for white people. It's for white people. End of sent. Like, really, it's by white people for white people. I mean, look, it was for Broadway. It was for rich. It was for the upper class. It's for white people.
What about you, Chris?
I'm gonna have to double down. This was for middle upper class white people. This is for people for whom the Lincoln Center was wiping away a cruddy little spot on Manhattan. Like,
Literally.
this isn't for anybody portrayed in the film. Literally nobody portrayed in this film besides maybe the cops.
Yeah.
OMG, I think we're actually going to triple down on that because, like, literally there is no other answer. Like, sometimes I'll try to come up with something fun and cute, but, like, I mean, truly, there's nothing fun and cute.
Yeah.
It is for white people.
It
Rich
really is.
white people. Did you like this?
Like, it's fine. It's like hard, fine leaning. No, I don't know. Like, really, the dancing and the music is kind of the only thing that saves it. And I know that this is a musical, but like, West Side Story as a whole just kind of sucks. So like, no, I guess no, I didn't, because I don't really want to watch it again. Like, I did it, I saw it, so no, I didn't. Chris, did you like it?
I'm gonna have to lean with I'll watch the first half of either version if
Yeah.
I'm like drunk or whatever. Like, I can enjoy, like you said, like singing and the dancing 100%. And the first half has the most of that, so I'll watch most of that.
Yeah.
And then I will never watch any of them again, probably. Like, I've watched them both twice now, and I don't feel the need to ever watch it again, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you think, Jazz?
I feel the same. So, I was never like a big fan of this to begin with. I was like, cool, even in like high school and stuff, right? Like, I was just like, okay, cool. The dancing is sick. The songs fuck. But like, other than that, I didn't really need anything else from this. So like, I'll watch this. Like, I'll watch the number that I want to watch on YouTube, right? Like, that's the level of commitment that I'm willing to give to West Side Story again. But basically nothing else. Like, that's all it gave me.
Yeah.
So I'm also leaning on like, no, I mean, I also don't really like the story of Romeo and Juliet either. So like, for me, I'm
Same.
like,
Yeah.
I don't like Romeo and Juliet, and I don't like this like racist ass version of it. So like, I'm gonna say probably no. Yeah. What about the 2021 Steven Spielberg masterpiece?
Ooh,
Eric.
Yes.
I hope my sarcasm came through. I'm not sure that
Yes.
it did. Was it new, interesting, or the same? Or was it progressive, regressive? How are you feeling?
It was new and interesting in the way that it's shot. I think it was literally exactly the same. Like, nothing about this has changed. Like anything that they tried to add or give nuance or context to, for the most part, did nothing to change anything about this movie. The only thing that's different is placement of the songs and the visuals. So I don't think it's progressive or regressive. I think it's like the most neutral version of this because they had to stay neutral on this very simple story. I think it's the same. I think it's like nearly the exact same. Nothing has changed except more noise.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. It's aesthetic differences, some of them positive, and it is a little bit more progressive in that they actually went out of their way to actually include people of color when including
this. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So on the production side, more progressive. No brown face. Definitely steps. Tiny infinitesimal.
Huge bonus points for no brown face this time.
Huge steps forward for the Caucasian community to not have any brown face in this movie. Strides, leaps, bounds.
Huge step forward for the Caucasians.
So there's that. For the rest of it, no, not much. Once again, the base story can't be amended beyond, until it's unrecognizable. So
yeah,
about the same.
Yeah, I think it was new only in the ways that it was shot. And like you were saying, Eric, like some of the placement of the songs, and it was like, okay, that's cool. And I think that was interesting. And I thought that those were cool choices. But by and large, it is still the same story beats happened. The things that I didn't want to happen, like the sexual assault scene, happened. And I was like, why the fuck does this need to be here? Right? Like, you had an opportunity. So, and you're right, Chris, it was progressive in those moments of like, okay, great. We have a Puerto Rican cast. Look at us. Pat on the back. Okay, look, we have a gender non-conforming person playing anybody's. Pat on the back. Great. Okay, look. Oh my gosh, you guys, gentrification is bad. Let's just throw that in there. Great. Awesome. But in all of that progressiveness, a lot of it to me felt really performative in this way where it's just like, see, we did better. We had more women on screen. Oh my God. But like it just felt more regressive because of those reasons to me.
Yeah.
Eric, who do you think it was for?
Well, white people again, and this time Steven Spielberg's career. Like, it literally is just, it is a decorative plaque of achievement for Steven Spielberg's, the auteur's filmography. That's all it is. It's just to say, like, hey, I got to do it. And again, once again, it's for white people. That's truly the audience. That's it. That's right.
Chris,
Okay.
Who do you think this was for?
So I think this is for, again, white people. I think it's for a different kind of white person. I think it's somebody who's a little bit more liberally minded, identifies as liberal, and sees it as a really big step in cinema. They see it as a really huge deal. And they're really, honestly, they're happy to pay the ticket price because, you know what, they want to support the arts made by
and the
people
theater
of color.
is back now. So,
Yeah.
you know.
It's
They're
for
so
pink-
glad that this didn't come to streaming because they have to see it on the big screen. Oh my
It's
God.
it's for pink tank top TikTok gay.
It's well-meaning, but a little misguided.
Yeah. That reference is also, by the time this episode comes out, is going to be so old. It's going to
my
be
God.
ancient.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay. Jess, who do you think this was for?
Y'all fucking nailed it. I have nothing to add. Like, literally, you are both so smart and so
Oh my God.
eloquent. And oh my God.
My
My
back
brains are
hurts.
so my
back
I
hurts
know.
from all the padding.
I mean, my brain, like, I have a headache. It's like my brain is swelling. Fuck. My brain is so big.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Eric, did you like this?
No, it's not. Well, no. I feel the same way about it, actually, as the first one. Like, will I watch part of it? Maybe, because I do think it's gorgeous, but, like, no, I mean, West Side Story sucks. Like, it's not good. So, no.
What about you, Chris?
I'm going to have to go with the same thing I said before, which is I'll watch the dance numbers. I'll watch
Yeah.
America on YouTube. I'll watch Mambo on YouTube. Pretty much anything with Ms. DeBose. Yeah, I probably won't watch it again.
Queer biracial icon, might I add.
Oh.
Miss Ariana DeBose.
Oh.
She's fucking cool. She's the coolest.
She is cool.
Jess.
But I think I would rather watch the first one over this one.
Okay.
Because I really, really, really did not like Maria or Tony. They felt so unbelievable. In the first one, I mean, like, it was like a little, at least there's like some sort of like whimsical romantic chemistry. In this one, there was no fucking chemistry. And then again, knowing what the actor was doing at the time and all of that, I'm just like, and it, to me, it was kind of like watching like a cardboard cutout of a white dude on the screen literally anytime. I feel like the only time he acted was when he found out Maria was dead, and that's when he was like, oh my god, Maria, blah. Like, but every other time he was just so boring, and he is not charismatic, and they had no chemistry. And for a film that is literally about this person who is like the main, like, I mean, it was just painful for me. So, in a way that the other one, if it's on in the background, whatever, like, fine.
Yeah.
But this one, I feel like it is very pretty, like you said, Eric, but like, I just can't. I don't care.
Yeah, again, it's like, we like truly should not care about West Side Story anymore. Like, who cares? It's done. Like,
I'm ready to forget.
I'm ready to forget. Truly.
OMG, me
I
too.
don't want to live in America. I don't. Well, you know what? I feel like we've come to the close of this gorgeous, gorgeous story. Chris, thank you for sitting here with us and
Thank you.
opening that beautiful, beautiful
course.
brain of yours to expel all of those beautiful thoughts on this story, on this West Side Story even.
I'm always ready to spill the gray matter on the table for you.
Thank you. It's amazing, and we appreciate it. Is there anything you want to plug?
I don't know, if you like weird horror art and D&D stuff, I don't know, follow my Instagram. It's C Oliver G, like the letters C, the name Oliver, the letter G, all one word. Instagram, do it.
Gorgeous.
I'm putting that.
Go follow.
Mhm.
His art is fantastic, truly and completely. I guess that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
again. This was really a pleasure to talk with you about this. It's been
Thank
fun.
you for having me. I was so excited to be here. And
Yeah.
This is such a joy.
And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you so much. Do not forget to follow. Oh, I'm sorry. That's you.
No, you do it. You do it. You
No,
do it.
go,
You do it.
you
No!
do it.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast and follow us on all social media. Truly, I'm going to start getting weird on Twitter soon on our page. So, like, look out for that. I mean, that probably would already happened. But, yeah, give us 5 stars because we fucking deserve it. Mwah.
Yeah. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre, editing by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Chris. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Goodbye.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast.